Hi everyone, this is Tevi, live from room 114. Welcome to the United States in the 1950s. So what are these three pictures? If you know them, jot them down. We know, guys, from our unit on the Cold War and the Korean War that things are definitely heating up. Remember, communism is spreading into Asia, and we also know now the Soviets have nuclear capabilities. So panic is spreading. So there is another Red Scare at home, similar to what we saw in World War I. This general fear that communists are in our country, so they're being subversive. So we have what's called Truman's Loyalty Review Program, and it really just looks into government's employees, their background to ensure that they have no alliance or allegiance to the Communist Party. But it definitely makes people more afraid, thinking that the communists have infiltrated our government, so it just increases the panic. There's something called the House on Un-American Activities, or the HUAC. So they hold public hearings to expose communists and also the sympathizers. Let me just pause here. Alright, so guys, my deal with you this week before vacation is that you don't have to fill out any guided notes. I want you to listen to how I go through this PowerPoint. I will make this PowerPoint available for you on Edline, but I will actually say your name at some point during this screencast, and I do want you to look up one short clip, a YouTube clip that can just be 30 seconds to a few minutes long to represent one of these topics. So let's keep going and just pay attention. McCarthyism. So this is a great quote, are you now or have ever been a member of the Communist Party? Famous line. So guys, he's a famous senator, Joseph McCarthy, and he has this search for disloyalty everywhere. I have in my hand a list of 205 that were known to the Secretary of State who are nevertheless working and shaping policy in the State Department. So, he claims to have these names. All right, so Rachel, you're going to be looking up something from McCarthy and the HUAC. So you should be able to find a short clip of the hearings that were held. All right, let's move on. The Hollywood 10. Alyssa, this is yours. So we focused on Hollywood producers and writers that had communist ties. So there were 10 producers that were brought before the HUAC, and they all were convicted on contempt of court for refusing to speak. If you guys remember the Fifth Amendment, you can actually use. They were all blacklisted by Hollywood companies. So Alyssa can find us a clip showing who the Hollywood 10 were. All right, on to my famous spy cases. I've got Kevin and Peter lined up here. So, Peter, who was Alger Hiss? We know that Whittaker Chambers from Time magazine was a former communist member. That we know. And he testified that Hiss had given him secret documents from the State Department. So, Peter, look him up and try and find a clip to show us anything about the hearing and what happened. What was the result? Kevin, I want you to look up the Rosenbergs, famous New York City couple. So they were accused of selling secrets of the atomic bomb to the Soviets. They were sentenced to death for espionage. So there's a lot of great clips out there, Kevin. Find a good one to introduce us to who the Rosenbergs were and what their trial was like. Look at this slogan, better dead than red. So this really should show you guys what the panic and the Red Scare did to our country in the 1950s. The commies are coming. So that's actually a term that I yell at my dad for because he still uses it today, and it's just it's derogatory. But definitely 1950s it was common. So living with the bomb. Here are some great pictures to show what kids were doing in the 1950s to prepare for possible attacks. So Tyler, this one's yours. You better do it. So please find us an example of either the fallout shelter you see here. This is the duck and cover routine. You might be able to find that on YouTube. So these are all examples of how we just lived in fear. So Tyler, that's yours. Find us a clip. Okay, so let's look a little bit at science in the 1950s. Look at all this stuff that's being developed in just this one decade. And so, Matea, Fraley, and Pat. I want you guys to look up, Matea, look up who the first 7 astronauts were. Fraley, check out NASA. How or why it was created. You can find us a clip about NASA. And Pat, your job is to look up Sputnik. I have here the clip from the New York Times, but there definitely will be some live footage, and this really freaked us out because the Russians beat us in space. So Pat, that's your job. So I'd like you guys to think about a theme for the 1950s is this paradox. Two kind of seemingly opposite things happening at the same time. It's known as a time of, being very conservative, very complacent, and very content. So conservatism, complacency, and contentment. Yet, it's also been described as a time of anxiety, alienation, and social unrest. So begin to think about what you see represent this decade. How would you sum it up? Which quote works better for you? The New American Dream. Check out these pictures. So this is showing, guys, the domestic life of Americans, mostly middle class, family values, the rise of the TV, the automobile. So I'm going to give you guys a few things. So suburbia. This is something that we take for granted today, but it started in the 1950s. So Sami, I want you to look up the GI Bill. There'll be lots of information about that and how it affected the 1950s. We really became a consumer society, and Bill Levitt, he's very important. Look at this picture of Levittown in the 1957. He mass-produced homes on a potato field 10 miles east of New York City, and with that, guys, the rise of suburbia. So Sami, you're the GI Bill. Michelle, you're Levittown. Definitely find us a clip about that. So guys, the blueprint of the New American Dream. Here is just the floor plan for a house. Something that you don't think is really a big deal today, but back then, guys, these types of blueprints were really revolutionary. The culture of the car. I'm going to have Brianne look this up. So, she could certainly find us a clip about drive-ins. Car registration certainly went through the roof after World War II. And the Interstate Highway Act, guys, the largest public works project in American history, so everyone now can drive places. 41,000 miles of new highways were built, so extraordinary feat. We take the highway systems for granted, but this started, during Eisenhower's presidency in the 1950s. So a homogeneous nation emerges. The first McDonald's, Howard Johnson's, and drive-in movies. So Brianne, you're welcome to look up one of these for your clips as well. The baby boom. Oh, and there's the bell. All right, guys, so what is the baby boom? Mary, I'm going to have you find us a clip about this. So the 1950s saw, guys, so many soldiers return. So between 1945 and 1961, 65 million babies were born. And over here, guys, a picture of a famous book. Dr. Spock publishes the Common Sense Book of Baby and Child Care in 1946. All right, guys, so I'm back. Sorry I had some interruptions with the bells. So, Mary, you're looking up a clip on the baby boom. There'll be lots of information. And Jackie, please look up Dr. Spock. My mom was so into this book. So, just look up. You can even look up who he was. There should be a clip about him in his famous child care book. Really influenced our culture, guys. All right, so let's keep going. So I just put in here, guys, how school enrollment increases, and between the 1950s and 1960s, the media really does celebrate parenthood and pregnancies and large families. So there were very well-defined gender roles. So Ellen, you're on for this. So take a look at this. There's a clip from Life magazine about who the ideal modern woman was. You can read that. There's Marilyn Monroe. And who was the ideal man? So there he is. So Ellen, I gave you two roles here, so why don't you just find another example of the ideal modern woman and the ideal modern man from the 1950s. And we can look at those in class tomorrow. So television, Sarah and Jess. So I know, Sarah, you're not going to be here tomorrow, so you can show us Thursday. Jess, you're welcome to check with Sarah and see what show you want to portray. TV culture, guys, really spreads. Comedies that show the ideal, family. There were children's shows. The news becomes transformed. Sports and music. So one of you girls definitely can show us a clip of I Love Lucy. Definitely, that's epic from the 1950s. So funny. So girls, find us some clips of TV shows. So let's keep going, guys. Teen culture. Ross, this is yours. So guys, check it out. The word teenager became part of our language in the 1950s. So, what is the identity? They have money to spend. Remember, we have consumerism on the rise. There's also this whole oh, I love the sound effects of James Dean, and Marlon Brando. So guys, these represent the wild side. So Ross, I gave you two examples of this teen culture. They were just like stars that just really influenced behavior. Wow, sorry guys, I just had Jack and Tyler stop by. So Ross, you're welcome to find us a clip. These are like famous movies. If you want to find another example of teens in the 1950s, go for it. So we'll hear from you tomorrow, Ross. Here are some funny rules of the 1950s. Obey authority, control your emotions, don't make waves, and don't even think about sex. So very repressive, kind of going back to the Victorian era. So that's why those movies I was showing Ross are pretty revolutionary. Rock and roll. All right, this is for Jared, Jack, and Meredith. So guys, rock and roll was rooted in African American rhythm and blues music. DJ Alan Free starts to play this type of music on the air, and listeners went nuts. Became a new form of music, and rock and roll was born in the 1950s. Television definitely changed the way. We'll look at that. So Jared, Jack, and Meredith, I gave you an example of Elvis, but you're welcome to find, one of you can do Elvis, and then just find, there's so much music in the 1950s, guys. Find two other short clips. They can be songs from the 1950s. So guys, for the three of you, I want three short clips. One of them can be Elvis. Alright guys, what was the beat movement? So, Abby and Julia, you're on this. So it was kind of a backlash, guys. It rejected materialism, right? All that consumerism. Rejected that Cold War military buildup, and it rejected conformity, right? So it really showed this need to be individual, right? To break free from the chains of society. So represents by Jack Kerouac, Allen Ginsberg, and so in the group here, I gave you some other names to look up. All right, so girls, I want you to look up. You can look up these top two names if you'd like, or find us a clip of the beat movement. So just come up with two things between the two of you, and show us, how to represent this movement visually. Here's a great picture of the beat movement, mostly, from the white academic class. Here's this values gap. These are the things that the beat movement fights against. And really important, guys, for our future unit on the 1960s, it definitely laid the foundation for widespread cultural rebellion by the youth. Matt, you're definitely not last here. You definitely should look up Soviet dominance in sports. You can find hockey. Remember to focus on the 1950s and find us a clip. And last but certainly not least, can I have Dan and Brian? I want you guys to look up movies in the 1950s. Lots of famous movies. So each of you find one short clip to represent what was going on in Hollywood in the 1950s. All right, guys, I'm out of time. This is Tevi signing off. Please do your assignment. It would help if you had the link all set to go, like on your Edline page, so you can just pull it right up. All right, guys, so I'll check on that for our half day tomorrow, and I will see you all. Bye, guys.